All right, it is 8 o'clock here in Lyon, and day one of the European semifinal has come to an end. This is probably one of my favorite competitions that happens all year round. I absolutely have a passion for the European CrossFit, and the European semifinal is the closest thing we have to European championships. We got what I believe are some of the deepest fields, men, women, and teams that we've ever seen in a semifinal this year, specifically in the East on last week and here in Europe this year. And a part of that is just the product of the way that the season and the system has evolved. But on the other end of that is the fact that the caliber of athlete in this sport is continually rising, and especially in Europe. I've been able to visit a dozen or so countries to watch competitions and get to know some of these up and coming athletes, talk with coaches, training partners, etc. And now to get to see most of them, competing here. Glad you can make it. I don't know where you're at, Sandor, but yeah, very happy to have you here, of course. Um, some of the regulars here, Melanie, hello, great to see you. So, semifinal one is done. Sarah's with us, Renata. And today we had 3 team events. We're going to start on the team side of things. I know there was a stream. Chase Ingram was working his butt off today. He had a bunch of guests on there. I'm sure some of you guys watched it. I don't really know. I didn't watch that at all. Obviously, I was on site watching every heat, talking to as many people as I can. So I'm not quite sure what that coverage was like, what you guys were able to see and not able to see. But regardless, no matter how good a broadcast is, how comprehensive it is, there's just always elements of live sports that if you're not on site, um, that you're gonna, it's being there. You can just notice different things, see more of the field of play, and then of course also, because I do know a lot of these athletes, have the opportunity to talk to many of them, talk to many of their coaches. Chase was awesome. Yeah, I just ran into Chase briefly. He's very busy. He's getting ready for the broadcast the next 2 days. I'm hoping to be able to catch up with him. Chase has been a friend of mine for a long time, and I know that he was grinding today. He said it on Sevon's podcast last night, or not last week, excuse me, that he loves this stuff. He loves watching it. He feels privileged to be able to be here. Um, Chase was great. It was a view of the whole floor, not too bad. So, there's always this kind of conversation about this is a sport. We want to see the wide shots. We want to see the whole thing. And I think obviously somewhere in the middle is good. But considering what they were able uh, to to provide today, he's a great person to have there because he can keep a conversation going with a lot of people. Oh man, he was good, but it wasn't great. Okay. Chase is always great. I just couldn't get into the camera, but I understand. So basically, I'm going to go through. We'll pull up the team leaderboard. We'll talk about some of the events. I know that a lot of you guys have questions about certain athletes, certain things, whatever. Please feel free to drop those questions, any questions that you have there, if you want me to specifically focus on something that I'm not focusing on. I think they did a great job. Obviously, didn't have a close-up view, but they did really great commentating. Yeah, I didn't find out until yesterday that Lucy Campbell was going to be a part of the commentary here. I know it's always this like challenge in CrossFit to find, women that have great perspective and insights. Lucy was on last year. She helped Chase with the podcast. She went on um, the broadcast as a guest as well, and I know that she did a great job on there. I was standing next to her last year. I could hear her doing a great job, and to see that they CrossFit, whoever's in charge of that team, recognized that and invited her back was very good. Kristen, I just basically listened since the camera angle was rough, but it reminded me of listening to a ball game on the radio. Having someone calling the action absent a good view is so much better. When I've done some stuff with Sevon at JR's gym, we've kind of also gotten that. I mean, we have some closer cameras, but just to have that running commentary is a good way to get a visual picture through audio of what's happening. So I'm glad to hear that that was at least possible for some of them. We'll come back to this, the individual men and women in a bit. Like I said, I want to start with the team side of things, and so let's just take a look at what do I even have up here. Um, let's take a look at the leaderboard right now. Actually, you know what? Let's take a look at the leaderboard right now. Let me find it here. and really it's not too surprising overall. This is so in if you guys were listening to or following along in the preview, I basically thought there were 6 teams in Europe out of a super deep European region that were pretty well positioned to make a push for the games. And 6 of the top 7 teams on your list there are those 6 teams. So you see 2 Swedish flags up at the top, being Prestrandra, who has the lead right now, and CrossFit Walleye. The C23 CrossFit Program Motion team in 4th place. That there are 3 Swedish athletes on that team, and then one from the UK. So 3 of the top 4 teams on this list are from Sweden, or most of their athletes are from Sweden. Those 3 teams were actually the 3 teams that I picked to podium in some order, and then you have 3 Norwegian teams in the top 7. 2 of them I thought would be in the top 6 come the end of the weekend. That's PSL and Riz, who's in second, 3rd, and 7th respectively. And then you have that BLST team there in 5th. There's 2 teams that we're going to talk about primarily today that I definitely underrated coming into this weekend. BLST is one of them, and then a little bit further down on the leaderboard is Gemer out of the Netherlands, and that was kind of an oversight on my part. Savon was singing my praise this morning. That's great to hear. I thought he was on with Nicole Christensen, which, by the way, Nicole Christensen is a fascinating individual. She usually does she's a level 4 coach. She usually does what are they called? The Hopper. They come out and she writes a ton of good articles and stuff. So I don't know, maybe he was doing another show or something like that. I don't know. If so, thanks, Savon, for the shout outs. So, basically that's to say these teams here. Okay, he was on for an hour after her. Yeah. So cool, very cool. Here we can actually address this since it's pretty prevalent and relevant here. Anna, did Christoph have an injury during the last lift? Yeah. So we'll go through the workouts a little bit, but this is a big storyline. And Christoph is one of the heaviest lifters on the floor. Mia Hesketh, the female on one of their female on their team. This is the Walleye Orca team, also one of the best lifters on the floor. I think Mia Hesketh actually ended up having the 2nd heaviest lift. And I want to talk a little bit about the girl that had the heaviest lift. She's on that Prestranda team, Lisa Eriksson. And then Christoph, I had called Greg Langto over. Greg Langto is a French-Canadian MC that I've worked with all around the world. And this is, I believe, his 4th, maybe his 5th year working at the French Throwdown. He loves this competition. He's like family with him. He doesn't do a ton of MCing compared to what he's done in the past, but he always comes here. And I told him, I said, I think Christoph's going to hit 325 or 335 on this lift. It's probably going to be, excuse me, Lisa Anderson. I apologize, Ariel. Thank you for correcting that. Lisa Anderson. And she's really impressive, and I will talk about her. And so sure enough, he did like a little warm-up weight at 275. And then Elliot Simmons hit 285. Christoph went for 325. He hit it. He looked great. Elliot went for 300. He missed the jerk, and they're having a little bit of conversation. Christoph looks super relaxed. If you guys are fans of CrossFit and you've seen Christoph, he lives for these moments. He loves these moments. He always puts on big shows. I think 335 was certainly within the realm of possibility for him. And since Elliot had missed that, maybe he wanted to try to get it 10 extra pounds on the bar there. So he goes for 335. Gets through the first 5 of the 6 components of the lift and misses the jerk. I actually took my eyes off of him for a second because there was another lifter that was going on right in front of him actually for one of the Krieger teams. And Greg came up to me afterwards and he's like, dude, I'm worried about Christoph. I'm like, what happened? And he said he was walking off the floor like a robot. I think something might have happened with his hip. I'm sure that everyone, it seems like some of you guys have seen that as well. And this year at the semifinals, I've pretty much I'm just there with B.Friendly Fitness, enjoying the action, trying to learn as much as I can about the athletes as always, but I'm not really involved behind the scenes. So I'm not going into the athlete areas. I'm not asking, the medical teams and stuff like I might do for the broadcast, where it would be more important to be able to get accurate information in that regard. So I just said, we'll see. I mean, that's a very experienced team. Mia Hesketh, Jamie Elliott, and Phil Hesketh is coaching them. And so I was like, I'm sure if there's a way that he'll come out on the floor for the last event, and I hope that he will. And he did come out. He looked a little ginger coming out into the floor walking. In the first few rounds, the running looked okay. In the last round, Elliot was pretty much like giving him a push in the back out the door, but he grinded through that workout. I thought it was a super courageous effort. And basically for that team, at this point, it's like they just got to find a way. I mean, they're sitting in second right now. It's great. They managed a sixth place finish on that workout, despite him not being at 100% presumably for that run. They do have, two more workouts tomorrow. They're in a good position. And ultimately, I mean, Christoph Horvath has never made it to the CrossFit Games. This is, the opportunity of his competitive lifetime for him. He's a tough man. He's a great competitor, and I really think that he'll find a way to do it. I hope that that's the case, because they're clearly a strong team. And Elliot and Jamie have had injuries in the past couple of years and seasons, so I'm really rooting for them, and I'm hopeful that they'll be able to go. I do want to talk about this Prestanda team just for a second. You may know, like on the team side, a lot of the time the problem is that you don't necessarily get to know the athletes so well, but you may know some of these athletes if you've been following the sport for a while. Maria Langfors is an experienced athlete over there. Victor Longsfed and Alexander Ilibro are probably athletes that if you're involved, especially in Europe, that you know. Lisa Anderson is the girl on this team. Early in the season, we thought it was going to be Verena Reimers out of Germany, who's one of the top two athletes in Germany, along with Franzi Hoger, who's on the women's individual field here. And Lisa Anderson replaced her on the team. I got some information from, actually, I think it might have been this guy, CF Nyheder, who I met today. Super cool guy, awesome guy. It was great to meet him because he's a big supporter of what we do. And Lisa Anderson, I actually met her yesterday at CrossFit Jena, and she is a former cross ski athlete, in the Olympic cross ski athlete. I don't understand exactly what that is. Christoph is on the Walleye Orca team that's sitting in second. CrossFit Walleye is Phil Hesketh's gym over there in Sweden, and Mia's on that team. Um, so Lisa Anderson, she's got a competitive background. I think she's been doing CrossFit for about 2 years. I saw her training yesterday with Maria and Alexander and Victor, and I went and talked to them, and I was like, Maria, I would like to just say hi to Lisa and get to know her, whatever. I don't think she's super plugged in necessarily to like this kind of stuff. I don't know if she's watching, for example, but man, was she impressive today. I think that their team on the run was just very good, just steady, steady, steady. She had that lift of 235 pounds on the complex, which was the heaviest lift on the floor, heavier than even Mia Hesketh, who's known for winning those. And then you look at their finishes, fifth, third, and third. So this is a type of team that I really like to take note of. No event wins, but super solid across the board and sitting on top of the leaderboard. Some of the other teams that you look on here, you see some like highs and lows. So PSL, for example, was actually I was just kind of show you guys. I had yesterday I had put up some of my picks for the workouts, and I think I did quite well on the first workout with the PSL and Walleye, second and fifth. On the second workout, I did not do great. Zarutz and BLST. I talked to the Spanish Zarutz team, the guys, especially Javi Gonzalez, just missed a couple lifts. But I think there were some stronger teams in the field that I could have potentially keyed in on there. And then for event 3, I had Butcher's Lab, Fleck, and Porti, who had respectable finishes. So it was kind of like a good, not so good, and then kind of an average on that one. But it's tough. There's a lot of good teams here. And then you see the program Motion and Oslo PSL. They had these 2 really good finishes to start. They were the top 2 teams prior to the run, clearly 13th and 17th compared to 3rd and 6th. And now you see Krieger and Walleye Orca ahead of them. This BLST team, if you are a huge fan of the teams in Europe, I did a podcast a few weeks ago with Simon Aslund, who is one of the 2 main coaches for the Krieger crew. And CrossFit Oslo Krieger has 5 teams here. Plus they have the Prostranda team. They have the Peak 360 team. In fact, Joachim Rigg went and worked with those guys during the quarterfinals over in Miami. And then there's one of the Butcher's Lab teams that's following their programming. They have a really good reach in terms of high-level team competition. And clearly their teams are doing well. And he told me that this BLST team and one of their other teams, Piger, it was probable that one of them would have a great semifinal and the other would have maybe not as good because they have different strengths and weaknesses. This team had, you can see their performances there, 4th, 13th, and 5th today, and very solid. Based on the conversations I've had there, I think these will be their better finishes. The two tomorrow, maybe in that 14th to 20th range potentially. So they may slide back a little bit, but they have put themselves in a pretty solid position to fight for a game spot tomorrow. And a lot of times, the workouts are what they are. They go in the order they are. But if you have a really good first day, sometimes you can kind of overperform on day number 2. We'll get to the workouts for tomorrow in just a second here. But I'll be definitely keeping an eye on them, because if they're able to snag 3 of those 8 game spots, that's quite impressive. We saw a couple of gyms last year who were able to do that with Invictus and the Krieger team, but now the spots have been reduced in those regions. And so we'll see if they're able to get 3 in there. But it's not going to be easy. On the cut line, well, we have Fleck there and Riz. I think these two teams are going to climb tomorrow on the leaderboard a little bit, maybe not too much, because I think those top 4 teams are pretty good. But I would expect them to stay in the top 8. I think BLST will slide down to at least 7th. And then even though there's a big points drop down to 11th with 41 points behind AOD, those are the teams that I still think have a fighting chance, 11 and on up. Obviously, something could happen, but Jemer, I want to talk about them real quick, because I kind of overlooked them coming into this competition, and they're actually the exact same team from last year that was competing as Nijmegen. They were 11th. They missed the games by 1 spot. And when I look back at their workouts from last year, they had finishes of 6th through 15th on most of the tests. And then they had their 6th place, which was their best, was on a heavy lifting test. They were 9th on that today. And they had this 128th place finish. There were 40 teams there last year. So it was near the bottom third of the field. That was on a workout that had male and female pairs with skiing and rowing and some synchro work of dumbbell snatches and box jumps. And that's important because tomorrow there's a workout that has male-female pairs with some rowing and some overhead squats. So it's they're going to basically have had to show some improvement in that domain if they want to make a jump up, especially because of who these teams are that are ahead of them. CrossFit Porti is once again a team that is a veteran team. These guys have been competing for several years together. Here, I'll show you how good they've been. Last year, 3 years at the games, always in the top 20 at the games. It's the same athletes here. Mirka and Laura are the women. Petteri and Josua are the men. One of their guys hit like 325 on the complex today, I think. 7th, 3rd, and 3rd in the last years of the semifinals. So they're like basically consistently the 6th or 7th best team in Europe, because there were 2 semifinals in a couple of those years. And last year they were 7th through 14th on every single test. They were 19th on test 1 today, and I think that will likely be the worst finish that they have. So I think that Porti, who is full of experience, like having the same 4 athletes come back 4 years in a row, make the games 3 years in a row, like I'm going to talk about Wilde Supernex later, but on the team side of things, this is kind of what that team is. Great question, Jake. This is a Northern Spirit. I got sent a couple of things of theirs. This is a Syndicate Crown one. It's a little bit big on me, but it's comfortable. And so I kind of feel like it's a sleeping shirt, and I showered right before this, so I'm wearing it. They do have some here for, I think they have like unique ones for every semifinal. I saw a bunch of people wearing them today. The Lyon one is like white with the pink and blue. It looks kind of nice. Maybe I'll get one. I don't know. Anyway. So Porti, I think that Porti is actually in a decent position here. They're 17 points out of a game spot currently, and they're going to have to pass by a couple teams if they want to do it. So what's that going to look like? CrossFit Holistic, you see their results here. So they were 9th on the lift. They were 2nd on the run. I would say that of the 5 workouts that the teams have this year, those are the 2 specialty workouts, with the other 3 workouts being more kind of traditional balanced fitness type of tests. And the fact that they were 20th on that first one makes me a little bit nervous for them tomorrow. They consulted for size with Daniel Brandon and Bryson Del Monte. Yeah. So Holistic, they were great on the run. I mean, it was really impressive. I talked to the Butcher's Lab team. I had picked them to do well on there. And oh, baby. Logan Brown, I got your strike. That's a disc. Thank you, Logan. Can't wait to see that, to pick it up. Um, and they were like, man, those Norwegian teams, those Scandinavian teams can really run. And Holistic was super impressive on the run. The Riz team that took that win, that was an expected win for them. And to come in second on that workout keeps them in a fighting spot. But for me, CrossFit Holistic has some questions to answer as just a little bit more of an unknown team than Porty and AOD. If you guys have been watching the kind of updates I've been doing on Instagram, I just for the recap today, I just focused on the teams. We will talk about the individuals here in a second, but today for me was about the teams. I don't think that the teams are getting enough love and credit relative to how hard they work, how good they are, how much they care, and how invested they are in this sport. In a lot of competitions I go to around the world, communities, a lot of which are fed by teams of 2, 3, 4, whatever, are like they're the lifeblood of the sport of CrossFit across all divisions and every country. And they are tonight, Jeff. I'm giving them some love tonight. I'll give them some love tomorrow because I know a lot of these athletes really well. I know a lot of their coaches, like I said, and it's pretty cool to be able to talk to them and get some insights. I actually like this is a kind of a cool thing that would be really hard to understand. So that BLST team, there was a guy on their team that at the end of the first workout, if you didn't see the first workout today for whatever reason, it was this is individual workouts. It was they had to hold the worm, and then they had this kind of chipper, 30 rope climbs, 120 wall facing handstand push-ups, 150 cal echo bike, and then a handstand walk buyout. On that echo bike, one of the guys on the BLST team hits the bike 35 calories in 35 seconds. This is in, you're in the middle of a workout. Okay, we know some guys have done 50 calories in 25 seconds on the Rogue Echo Bike Challenge. He goes back to hold the worm, so he's not even getting a full rest. There's still weight piling down on him. And when he comes back to the bike, 30 more calories in 40 seconds. It was like, oh my, like that kind of stuff, those little details to hear that. Obviously, I'm not picking that up during the competition, but to be able to go back, check in with their team, check in with their coaches, and learn some of that is really cool, and kind of can put into perspective how talented some of these athletes are. And in the team side of things, you do sometimes get the opportunity to flex your muscles on something that you're really, really good at. And so he obviously got to do that there. And I think that tomorrow, when we look forward to some of the workouts tomorrow, we're going to see an opportunity for some of that once again, specifically with rowing and overhead squats in workout number 4. But before we get to tomorrow, I do want to talk about the AOT team. I totally just missed them when I was looking at my notes. I did one take on that recap of the day teams for today with Marius from Truth Films, who's helping us out this weekend. He's helped us out at a lot of competitions over the past since we've become a business, a company. And but they actually withdrew from last year's competition, but they have the same athletes coming back, and looking at their results. Right there sitting in 8th place, 14th, 6th, and 8th. So this is the type of consistency that I like to see from teams. Porty and AOD, to me, are the 2 teams that are going to be climbing tomorrow. And BLST is the team that I think is going to be kind of moving back towards that spot. So if I had to just put an overall prediction out for tomorrow, looking at what we have here, I think if you're just talking game spots, I think Krieger, Walleye Orca, PSL, and C23 Program Motion are going to be in a 4-way battle for 3 podium spots. I think Butcher's Lab Fleck and CrossFit Krieger Riz will climb up into the 5 and 6 spot somewhere. I think BLST will slide down to 7, 8, or 9, and I think AOD and Porty will be the other 2 teams in that mix. So those are the 9 teams that I think are going to be vying for those 8 spots. We talked about Gemer and Holistic potentially being in the mix and absolutely having a chance, but if from a big picture perspective, that's what I'm kind of looking at. I think I'm going to close out the team stuff before I move on to the individuals for today. So we're going to take a look at what is actually in store for tomorrow and some of the teams that I think can do well there. So this is it's kind of like a 2-person relay type of thing. So 1 male and 1 female have to take the floor, 3 rounds of 30 cal row and 30 overhead squats. They can split it however they want, but I think in general, I mean, if you were looking at this workout, where would you put the man? I would put him on the rower. There's no reprieve if the woman's on the rower. However, that's 90 overhead squats And I don't, if you happen to have a female on your team or two females on your team that is amazing at overhead squats, this is a huge advantage because a lot of the guys are going to be able to chip away at that row pretty quickly, but not a lot of the teams will have a female who's going to be able to do all those overhead squats. So here's a great example. Will Christoph be okay in the overhead squats? First, he did 75 worm thrusters with whatever's going on with him today. I was watching really closely, and it was a little hard to tell whether he was in any amount of discomfort on the squats because he had some Nike runners on that had a lot of cushion and kind of a boat bottom to them. So the heels were just naturally up from the shape of the shoe. But he did all the thrusters. He was clearly hitting depth. And in the worm thruster, you don't have to necessarily have extension of the full hip. So that's where I would be a little bit questioning whether he'll be able to do that or not. But he may not have to do any overhead squats. That's what I was kind of getting at, is if you have a female that's great at overhead squats, Mia Hesketh potentially, maybe she can just do those and save him in that regard. And because they have a points buffer, I think that they may be able to sacrifice a couple spots to maintain the integrity of that hip for him. Of course, it depends on how he's feeling, but without knowing that, that's kind of where my thoughts are at. I'd rather Christoph just stay on the rower and let Mia grind it out. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they end up trying to do. In terms of the overall team competition here, I think that the PSL team from Krieger is a great pick to win this one, and that would go a long way towards them trying to get maintain one of those spots on the podium. And then I talked to the C23 Motion team today, and those guys are good guys. I told you that they're from three of them are from Sweden, so. Antonia Falk-Kodalinski, who is their captain, she's been on the CrossFit Nordic team at the games a couple years. She also won the RX division of Wadapalooza 2 years ago. Axel Lundgren, a very experienced athlete here. Actually, I found out while I was in Greece last week, he first competed in the Athens Sortum back in 2015. So he's been competing in CrossFit and on teams for a while. Ella Wunger, who made the CrossFit Games last year. Obviously, that's like a tremendous, excuse me, didn't mean to click on that, a tremendous addition to the team. And then Harrison Bell is the one guy from the UK. And I do want to click on Harrison Bell. We can look down here and see that he has team experience going back to 2017, 2018, 21 they made the games, and 2023 last year as well. So Harrison's been competing on teams in CrossFit for a long time. This is they're not like a super flashy big names type of a team, but they're very good. And I asked them which workout will you guys do better on tomorrow, and they said both of them. So they pretty much had one troublesome workout there with the 17th on the run. And for a team like this, like if they manage 4 top 5 finishes and have a 17th on the run, well, then it's pretty, that's pretty helpful for them going into the games as something that they can focus on. But I would say that this team is a sneaky podium contender at the games that you may not know about, and Walleye and Pastrana potentially as well. So to win that workout tomorrow, I probably would pick PSL, C23, and Pastrana as a top 3, and then amongst the teams that are on the bubble, I like Porti, AOD, and then BLST in that order for that workout. I think that this will be the most challenging workout of the weekend for BLST, and that it could potentially, even though it'll be probably their worst finish, how good or bad that ends up being could be the answer to whether or not they end up making the CrossFit Games or not and getting that 3rd spot for Krieger. Let's take a look at the final workout. And by the way, if you guys are just joining, feel free to ask any questions about teams, things from today's competition, individual athletes. I'll try to give you as much insight as I can. The last workout's an interesting one. So 4 rounds for time. You have some work that is split and some that is together. Eight teams will go to the game. So we've kind of been walking through that. That I think there are 6 teams in a good position, and then there's like 5 teams battling for those 2 spots. I think that that's going to come down to Porti, AOD, and BLST, and 2 of those 3 will end up taking those spots. But we'll obviously find out tomorrow. Okay, Audrey, we're going to be competing in Syndicate Crown, so we'll talk about that at some point. I'll get to Koski in a bit. Sarah. So 5 synchro muscle ups. Any 2 athletes can do that. Then the other 2 athletes have to do it. Then they all go to the worm, 10 worm clean and jerks, and 15 synchro burpees over the worm. Most of the teams that I spoke to today were a little bit bummed about the volume of muscle ups here and the fact that they're bar muscle ups. So 5 bar muscle ups for athletes at this level is very easy, to put it lightly. There are a couple nuances with the rules about the last, the who has to do the everyone has to be in a certain spot to do the muscle ups. So just like having that chemistry and that communication and that um, synchronization is key, but really this is going to come down to capacity, I think, because the muscle ups will be a wash, so there's no really opportunity to flex the gymnastics muscle here. And so synchronicity with the worm clean and jerks and the burpees over the worm, I'm going to favor the teams that have that experience. And in terms of the overall uh, win, I think this is another great workout for Riz. Riz was the team that won the running workout today. They looked perfectly in unison. Again, I'm not sure if you guys were able to see that at all or not, but their worm thrusters were perfect. And I talk with those guys, and they practice on the worm all the time up there in Oslo. So I think they'll be a great pick, and I think Prostrando as well. SPM, the best. Thank you, my friend. Will we see anything new besides the work at the games? The work, I don't know what the work at the games is, Sarah. Maybe you can clarify that. Sorry. Anyway, those Riz, Pastrana, C23 are teams that I think could take the overall win on this. And then when you're looking at that, those cut teams, I think that this is going to come down to just some guts. I really do like the Porti team to be able to make up the gap and get into a last spot there, but it's a tough call. AOD, they, like I said, they have some experience on that team, and BLST is going to be the big question tomorrow. I kind of hate to say it, but I think that AOD and Porti might sneak those last 2 spots at the expense of BLST. But either way, I think the team competition tomorrow is going to be an absolute blast. I think there's going to be a great battle for the podium, whereas we've seen a really, really strong team in Europe the past couple years with Oslo Navy Blue. Clearly, they still have good teams, but it will be a good podium battle. It's always fun to stand on the podium, and as well as a really tight race down below. So I hope that gives you guys some context about who these teams are, what some of their history is, who the athletes are. Um, you know, like I said, if you guys have any other questions about the teams, I'm always happy to talk about it. So Sarah meant to ask, will we see anything new besides the worm at the games? I have to say, I've been really happy with the programming overall this year. I mean, the biggest kind of critiques I have is that I would probably have added a workout to the quarterfinals, and I would probably have added a workout to the semifinals for both the teams and individuals. I just like the 5 quarters, 6 team workouts, 7 individual workouts. There's a ton of probably factors that go into making those decisions that I don't know about. But Dave is clearly back. You can see his fingerprints on the programming. Him and Adrian have 15 years of working together on this stuff, and I think that they kind of refine each other's skills when it comes to programming. So I feel like the programming has been refreshing. It's a callback to classic CrossFit, but it still has relevant tests for the teams. I know there was a lot of conversation concerned about that first workout for individuals today, which we're about to talk about, and it actually looked amazing. It was definitely not unsafe. It was like a true like throwdown style event where you could see all your competitors, and look them in the eye, see what they were doing. And so all of that is to say that, yeah, I think that Dave and Adrian will, as they always do, come up with something that's unique, something that's new, something that's a little different, a little twist on an old thing. Last year, that rowing thing where they were able to sit down and pull the bob towards them on North Park. I think that it's likely that we'll see some element new at the games this year, Sarah. So thanks for the question there. All right, well, that was 30 something minutes about the teams. And we'll move on to the individuals. We'll go in the kind of the order that they competed today. The men popped up first, but I want to talk about the women first. So the women competed first, and again, I'm not entirely sure about how much of this you were able to see or how much detail you were able to see. So as I'm going through the list, if there are any athletes that you want to know more about, just throw them in the chat and I'll do my best to kind of answer them. But we'll start at the top and we'll kind of work our way down, because obviously there's athletes that did great today. Obviously there's athletes that didn't, but big picture, keep in mind that this is one of 5 workouts. And when we think back to certain semifinals from the past, we can remember stuff like Haley Adams being in 21st at a semifinal and then ending up winning the semifinal. She was at 21st at the end of day 1. She went on to win the semifinal. And that was, there was more of the percentage basis gone at that than they were tomorrow. Absolutely, Barkley. There are athletes that did okay. That is correct. So, Gabby McGowan and Amy Kringle. All I know is Gabby won. She did win, but it was super close, as you can see on there. 2 seconds. Amy Kringle was leading the entire way. They entered the arena on the last run. I mean, Amy Kringle went out hot. And Amy Kringle, I had a chance to talk to her yesterday at one of the local affiliates, and she is like super excited. I met with her coach a little bit. In the off season, they've competed at Down Under Championship, learned some things there, and then they've just been kind of grinding and preparing for this. And she, there's a lot of people that believe she has a great chance to make the games, and she came out with a mission. She had a pretty commanding lead, and Gabby McGowan is becoming more and more of a veteran in this sport, and she had a very veteran-esque performance. Chipped away, chipped away, chipped away. She was about within 10 seconds going into the last run. She made up all of that distance on the run. Amy got to the barbell about a half second first because her barbell was a little bit closer, maybe a second beforehand. And Gabby started doing some touch and go reps. And she ended up basically finishing 1 rep ahead of Amy Kringle. It was a great display by both athletes, a great start of the competition by both. In my kind of picks yesterday, let's see, I had some good picks again and some not as good picks here, but I had Gabby, Amy in the top 2 positions there. Whoops, I forgot to pause it. And clearly they finished 1 and 2 in that order, so that was great. But it was so close, and it was so fun to watch them battle it out. And then afterwards, Amy Kringle walked across the floor, sat down, and she was like having a conversation with Gabby and Laura Horvath, which is always cool to see, because Gabby and Laura are the class of the women's field in Europe. They're the only 2 women that have been in the top 10 the last years at the games, and Amy Kringle is that's where she wants to be. So she's to go over there. I would love to know what they talked about, but great performance for them. After that, Emma Tall came in, and I think, to be fair, I haven't listened to too many of the other analysts and sports commentators leading into the semifinal, but I didn't hear a ton of talk about Emma Tall. I think I picked her 4th overall behind Karen Frey, Gabby, and Laura, and she had a great performance to start the weekend. Emma Tall is an experienced athlete. I think she's one of the top 5 in Europe when she's healthy. She had I think 11th or 12th last year at the CrossFit Games, and it was just a really, really controlled and great performance and start to the weekend. If she's feeling good, I think we're going to see her continue to have some staying power here in the top 5 throughout the weekend. Then you get into some of the the names that are like pretty exciting to talk about here. Ella Wilkinson and Jen Weir. I mean, the UK has some great representation, obviously, with 3 of the top 5 women right here in this opening workout, and they have a good amount of athletes competing here in general. So Wilkinson, I would say this is probably, I should have probably included Wilkinson in the sleepers pick. I just kind of wasn't thinking about it last night, but this is probably a specialty workout for her, probably her best workout of the weekend. Not to say that she's not a good athlete, but if you're thinking about who are the women in Europe and what's coming up, I would not be surprised, or I would be surprised if there are any finishes better than this for Wilkinson. She was also in the first heat, and it's can be tough in the first heat to not have the chance to go against the other women that are putting up the best times. Although we'll get to that with Lazar when we get to the men's side. And Jen Weir, Jen Weir is in a very similar situation to Amy Kringle, where there is a huge contingency of support. SPM says Isle of Man is not strictly part of the UK, which is where Amy Kringle is from. I mean, it's a UK flag on there, so I don't know how else to designate it in terms of talking about it. But yeah, technically I would defer to your judgment on that, SPM. And Jen Weir had a great performance. She started really well last year in the first workout, kind of put her name on the map. I think a lot of people expected her to fade towards the back half of last year's competition as the gymnastics and the skill increased, but she stayed pretty tough. I mean, she didn't make the games, but I think it was an excellent showing from her. Everyone I've spoken to has says that she has made big steps forward this year, and the technical aspect of this year's competition is much reduced. So, great start to the weekend for Jen Weir. If you're a fan of hers, I absolutely think she's going to be in the mix here. And it's not UK. What is it? What should I call it? I'm happy to call it something else if that's what it's meant to be. That's our flag. Okay, that's the flag. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm just calling what I see on the screen. So I apologize if that's insensitive to any of you guys, but she's from the Isle of Man. She's got a UK flag on the screen. We are Manx. All right, cool. Good to know. Learning something. So Jen Weir there. We get a couple veterans that come in. Jacqueline Dahlstrom, who I think is going to make a return trip to the games this year. Nice solid start to the weekend. Laura Horvath, I thought she'd be about 5th. 7th is still pretty good. And then I think I saw a comment over here. And I was really happy, Lynn, that you threw up this comment because these were 3 of the women that I had kind of marked down as being really excited about right off the bat. So Emma Tall, we talked about. Miran van Roer has been talked about a lot this year. I think that many people expected her to have maybe a top 5 finish on this, just giving her high rocks background. I saw a little bit of conversation somewhere online or something like that about if this event workout was similar to high rocks or not. I think in some capacity it is. I mean, it's a 5, it's a lot shorter of an event, 20 to 25 minutes, but 5 rounds of running and then some, work in between. It's only one thing relative instead of having several things. But Miriam had a good event. She looked nice and solid, and I think she's a very exciting athlete in general this year because she's relatively new to the scene. There's always someone that comes up and kind of mixes it up, and I think that she's going to have a great start to the day tomorrow as well. So, hey, no worries, man. That's those are things that I like to know about. So, Miriam van Roer, I think she's kind of a dark horse pick a lot of people are having, and here she is flirting with the cut line already in a good spot after day 1. But that's on a workout that I think people were expecting her to do well on. I'm going to really be looking at her on the Lagos rope climbs, which will be coming up tomorrow, and the snatch ladder. Some things that we don't necessarily know how good she is at yet. So that leaves Elena Karatala Sanahuya. And, I would not have thought, if I actually picked, as you saw in the graphic, Sylvia Garcia of the Spanish athletes to have a good performance here. She ends up taking 14th. She's a really good runner, but she was just a little bit slow on the barbell relative to so many of the other women in the top 10. But Elena looked awesome on the running event today, and she's got this interesting history in CrossFit. She's oftentimes done really well in online competitions. She qualified to the CrossFit Games through a last chance qualifier one year, and then in live competitions you kind of get some really good performances and some not as good performances. This is a fantastic start for her. And I would say that overall for the field, that's not a great sign because she's one of the veteran athletes that a lot of these up and coming rookies that we're, talking about and going to talk about, the Amy Kringles, the Jen Weirs, the Claudia Glucks that are out there that are trying to nag one of those really premium 10 spots. If Elena Karatala has a good weekend, that's just one more veteran athlete to add to the list, along with the likes of the Emma Talls, the Jacqueline Dahlstroms, the Karen Frays, who you see there in 10th, the Emma McQuaid's, who's sitting there in 13th, that's in the way. So I would, if for Elena, this is great. For Spain, this is great to give them I think to put herself in a position to have a real fighting chance this weekend. But it just is going to increase the drama overall as these women continue to battle it out. Karen Frey, great. I think this is a very solid finish for her. As I mentioned earlier, I picked her to finish on the podium for the weekend overall. I still am going to stand by that pick. Connie Easby, wow, what a cool story. I didn't really know this about Connie Easby, but I was talking to someone who's in her camp today, and she has this posted on her social media about having an eating disorder several years ago. There's some pictures of her being, obviously incredibly thin and unhealthy, and that she's made this full transformation to come out here, qualify for a European semifinal, be competing on a big stage in an awesome arena against some of the best in the world. And what a great start to the competition for her. I hope she's from the UK. The flag is the UK. So that's really nice to see. Rebecca Wittesen, I think she's going to be in the mix the whole weekend. Emma McQuaid looks like she's back to her normal self. She had a solid finish there. Garcia, we mentioned. Rike Larsen out of Denmark. Don't know a ton about her, but solid start to the weekend. And then you get into a kind of an interesting group of women here, 16 through 20. Kishmin, Solberg are women that I picked outside of the top 10. Angonis and Fuliano I picked inside of the top 10. But all of those are kind of in that group of like 5 to 18 that we talked about coming into this weekend. And I think that for this workout, especially when you kind of look up here and there's a few athletes like the Wilkinsons and the Easby, Garcia, Larson, that these might be some of their better performances. This is okay. This is an okay place to be. When you start dropping below the top 20 here, so now we have athletes like Emily Lundberg. I think that if you're not keeping an eye on Emily Lundberg, you should be. She's one of the best upper body pullers in CrossFit. She could have top 5 finishes on both the legless rope climb and the final. So keep your eye on her to make a climb towards up the leaderboard here. Claudia Gluck, I mean, it was cool. The French fans on site today were awesome. Wendy Janas and CrossFit Khan and Claudia Gluck and Guillaume Brion, Victor Hoffer were out there competing. Margot Masset, like they were getting some really, really big support. But for Claudia Gluck here, a 23rd place finish, and she's going to need to have some great performances. She's don't underestimate her though. Like she's not the biggest athlete out there by any means, but she had some great performances in Dubai on workouts that could potentially correlate to good performances here. And I think that Gluck and Lundberg are kind of in these positions down here where they still have a chance to climb up the leaderboard and get close to that top 10 with maybe 1 or 2 workouts to go. As you scroll all the way down through the rest of the leaderboard, the only other athlete that really jumps off the page that I thought coming in was in that conversation to go to the games was Turi Helgadottir, another veteran of the sport, and not a great start for Turi here. Generally more of a sprinter than a long distance runner. But she's going to need to have something special, I think, to make the games at this point. So that's just like a general touch point on the women's field. It's only one event. They have 2 workouts tomorrow, and let's talk about what happened today first, and then we can fast forward, to tomorrow, because I think there's a ton of interest about what's going on the men's side. Obviously, a lot of you guys have been asking about Jonna Koski and also BKG, but we'll do the same as the women. We'll start at the top and work our way down. So I think let's start with we're going to get to this in a second. I had a great conversation with Braun today at the end after he worked out. So Lazar Jukic is where I want to start because he was in the first heat. He got a penalty during the quarterfinals, and so it dropped him down just outside of the top 20. I think for the athletes for whom that happened, because Pat Vellner's in a similar spot in the West next week, for example. This is kind of a good draw in terms of programming, where you only have to have one event on the first day where you're not maybe in the spot that you would expect to be. I think that the athletes recognize that it's an advantage to be in that top heat. So Lazar comes out, and I think it was nice for him to have Michael Smith there, 5th place in the heat. When we were talking about the picks that I had made yesterday, you see Mickey Smith down there at the bottom and Lazar all the way up there at the top. So, clearly was expecting them to have good performances, and they did. They finished first and second that heat. Lazar, I was watching pretty closely. He was flying close to the sun on that last set of clean and jerks, and I'll tell you about a little conversation I had with him and Uldis in a second. So Lazar takes the heat win. He sets a good time. I went up to him and I said, "Can anyone beat that time?" And he's like, "I don't know." I said, "I think it's going to be top 3." He's like, "Yeah." I said, "I think Yella can beat it." He goes, "Maybe Yella." I said, "What about your brother?" He's like, "Close, but probably not." I said, "What about Uldis?" He goes, "No, not Uldis. Clean and jerks are too important." So let's talk about Uldis next here. Lynn says Uldis was amazing. I did not see that coming. You guys can see here from the picks that I had that Uldis was one of the top 5 guys that I had picked for this workout. 4 of these guys finished in the top 6, and Aniol did not. We'll get to that in a bit as well. And so the workout starts, and Colin Bossard just goes guns blazing out of the gates. Yellow Host stays hot on his heels. I don't think anyone was surprised surprised by that. Yellow Host obviously being a great runner. We saw at the games last year. And Luka Vuniak comes in. Nika Maizaradze went out pretty hot. He did okay, ended up finishing 10th, but I think a little bit of a little competition excitement and aggression for an athlete who's relatively new to competition, live competition, got the best of him there where he faded a little bit. 10th is still a good finish, but and then Uldis comes in, and Luka Jukic was so calm. I mean, I've watched Luka compete a lot, and when I have been previewing this semifinal, I've been talking about the fact that he's now at the age that his brother was at when Lazar kind of broke through um, to the biggest stage, and then has had those 3 straight top tens, these multiple wins in European semifinals. And I watched Luka. He started towards the back of the pack because of the way that it was worked out. He looked completely calm in his face. He wasn't stressing. He did pass by a couple of guys in the first round, but he was maybe like 10th in round number 1 in his heat. By the second round, even though Colin Bossard was first out the door, Yellow Hoste was first out the door, Luka Vuniak, who had the very first bar when you come back in from the run, he was the first one to get a clean and jerk. So right away in the second round, even though he was 160 meters behind on the run, the workout ends with the clean and jerk. So he had made up almost all of that distance in a round and a half, basically. And Uldis Upanex was only a few bars down from him, and it was very similar. I had spoken to Uldis earlier in the day, and he told me, "Hey, my position, Luka's position, he was talking about Luka Jukic, Luka's position over here. We have an advantage over those guys because at the end of the workout, if we come in 10 or 20 seconds behind them, we still can beat them because of where our bars are." And here we go. My man, Barkley Dale. Uldis has the third highest top 10 finish rate in any running events at 56%. So over half the time that running shows up in any workout of any kind in competitions that Uldis has done in our database, he's finishing inside the top 10. So anytime there's running in a workout, for future sake, don't forget about Uldis Upanex. In fact, I was talking with one of the managers who manages a lot of European athletes, and she was like, "Oh my God, I always forget about Uldis. I can't forget about that guy." And that's what I said in the preview. He's made the games 4 straight times. He doesn't usually win events. He doesn't do a ton of flashy things. Maybe Barkley will tell us, besides the shuttle to overhead part A, if there's any other events that he's won. But he's just very steady. He's very consistent. And I actually spoke to him today about, Barkley. Who has a higher finish rate in running workouts than Uldis? T-Bird wants to know. Great question. And Uldis is like, I listened to your show, and I think you're right. The snatch is going to be the critical workout for me. So very excited to see what he does there. But Upanex, I didn't think he would win it outright. I did think he'd be in the top 5, and sure enough, he is there. So Latvia takes the top spot. Serbia goes 2, 3, 4, which is pretty cool. And then appreciate you, man. Thank you. And then Michael Smith comes in at the 5 spot. I talked to Mickey. They all call him Mickey. I talked to him today. He's been around for a long time. Honestly, he's not really competing for high level CrossFit anymore. And I think it's important to say that because for the longevity of just life in general, you don't need to be doing a crazy amount of volume. But he's really fit. He's really controlled on the floor. He did a high rocks competition earlier, and he's in great running shape. So I thought this could be a good workout for him. But when athletes have the capacity to compete without stress, they call it like competing free. That's when they're at their best. In general, I learned this through the OPEX course that I took a few years back, the CCP1 course. Humans have a certain amount of stress that they can manage in their life. Training and competing is stress. Like you're stressing your body, you're stressing your nervous system, joints, muscles, etc. If you're not sleeping well, if you're not eating well, if you have stressful relationships, if you get angry about a lot of things, these things are all just stress, stress, stress. If you're worried, nervous, anxious, and you're coming to the competition floor, there's a certain level of it that's okay. But just kind of going out there and doing your thing and not having this, this is actually funny. This is actually, I'm glad you put this out there. So I finished my thought. So, uh, Mickey Smith, I think he's competing very free. I would be shocked if he made the CrossFit Games, but the slate of programming is really good for him. The mental state is as good as you could possibly have in terms of an athlete lining up for a semifinals type of workout, and he has that veteran experience to lean into. I mean, he was 20 minutes on the floor today. He's going to be maybe 22 to 24 minutes on the floor tomorrow. Like, he can do that. He can go to that level of intensity for that time domain because that's what he does every day. He would struggle at the CrossFit Games with the current style of training he's doing, but we've seen this in the past. Think about Stacy Tovar last year. If you guys are watching the games, she did great at the semis because it's kind of similar. And then before the games, that's when she ramped up her volume of training. And so that's probably a good lesson for athletes overall, is that there's different types of fitness that will be beneficial at different types of the season. Now, Mark Carmona won at 71%, Yella 2 at 67%, and Uldis 59%. This is 30 career event win in the database. Uldis competes in some off-season competition, so he's probably logging some wins against like lesser caliber athlete or fields competitively than a semifinal. But it does point to the fact that what I said earlier, this guy knows how to compete. He's been around. He's very, very good, and should not be underestimated. 8th win out of 30 with cleans. So, a pretty good combination of things for him. The clean is going to be vastly favorable to the snatch that we'll see later in the weekend. Mark who? Okay, this is great. So Mark Carmona, actually, here he is, finishing 9th out of Spain. CrossFit Uru, L-L-U-R-E, Uru, I guess. I talked to some of the Spanish athletes, and I don't think that they would have known that stat that Barkley just threw out. But Mark Carmona, clearly a good runner. I'm pretty curious to see if he can back this performance up at all. But I would say of the guys in the top 10, without a doubt, he's the biggest surprise here. Every other athlete that's in the top 10, I probably would have picked to be within the top 10. Luka Vuniak, I thought would be more like 8th to 10th, so he had a great workout. But Bossard, I thought would be in that kind of 8 to 10 range. This was a really good. We talked about Colin Bossard and Victor Hoffer in the run-up to this, and I said, I think that Bossard needs to have a great performance on the run relative to Hoffer. Well, Bossard was 6th, and Victor Hoffer was 30th. So now let's see what happens as the weekend wears on. But Colin Bossard could not have done himself much more favors than he did here in this workout. And at the end of the workout, the last 2 rounds, he made the money up on the barbell against Yella Hoste, who you would think that, Yella may move that bar really well. But Colin looked great today. Hapalainen, very solid 3 times games athletes in a row. I think I picked him to finish on the podium for the weekend, so great start for him. And Nika Maizaradze, who's one of my sleeper picks. Sleeper picks, when I'm putting those out, that doesn't mean that I think they're going to win or I think they're going to get a top 3 in the workout. That means I think this is going to be one of their best workouts of the weekend. So, for example, Javi Serra, I picked him as one of the sleeper picks. He finished 22nd. Let's see how the rest of the weekends go. I know he's also good at legless rope climbs, but I would guess those would be his 2 best performances. But people have to finish in the bottom half of the field, and so if he's getting, let's see how that holds up. But that's kind of what I'm going at. John Young said that Nika has no chance to qualify. John Young came into the CrossFit space through conversations that I had with him. He has a massive platform right now, and a lot of people are listening to what he's talking about. But he has a pretty, I think he would self-admittedly say he has a pretty narrow perspective on the depth of talent in the field. He's really, really good and really, really knowledgeable about the established and top athletes in the world, but he doesn't know much about Nico, as actually who he prefers to be called, Mazaradze. And I think I picked Nico just outside of a qualifying spot. This is a perfect set of workouts for him. The challenge for Nico Maizaradze is lack of experience on a competition floor. So let's see how he manages it over the weekend. But outside of the snatch ladder, I think he can have 5 pretty good performances this weekend. And if he's able to execute that workout well, I think he'll be in the John and I have talked about this a lot. And I mean, look, John, he stays home, he works out, he trains at the gym, he does all this thing, he watches a bunch of CrossFit when he can, but he mostly knows about the top athletes in the world and the North American athletes, and I would put him as one of the better guys in that regard. But for the international and the kind of the further down, it's just he doesn't invest as much time into that, which is totally fine. I'm going to put a bookmark on this one, Barkley. We'll come back to this in a second. So looking at the other part, we're just outside the top 10 here. I do want to mention Harry Lightfoot. Man, I was super impressed with Harry Lightfoot today. I spoke with his coach, Mike Allen, yesterday. He told me a lot about this workout in particular and some different types of testing that they'd done. His time here was under 22 minutes. That was faster than he tested it, either of the times that they did in testing. And he closed really well. The MCs on the floor, Estella and Greg, were commentating at the touch and go reps he was doing. He had this strategy of doing several touch and goes and then singles at the end, and kind of noting that he felt he could make up some time in that regard. But his running looked great. And after the workout, he came to me and he said, "I told you, Brian, I'm here for the war. I'm here to fight." And I really think that Harry this is the best form of Harry Lightfoot that I've seen yet in competition, and I'm excited to see what he can do this weekend. This is where, similar to the women, this is quite frankly where I thought a lot of these guys would be. Guillaume Briand, Zanoni, Wesolowski, BKG. Aniol did a little bit worse than I thought on this workout. I thought he'd be in the top 10, but 17th. But this is not a bad place to be. Ludwig Hansen, Moritz Fiebig, even Sven Jeans down here. These are solid performances. None of these guys I would say are, like I said, I thought Aniol would do a little better, but none of these guys I would say are like savage runners. And up here we have some really, really good runners. So finishing in that middle 10 position is fine for these guys. And I think that several of them are going to stay in the fight throughout most of the weekend. Guillaume Briand, great upper body puller. I think he'll make some moves tomorrow. Enrico Zanoni, I talked to him. He's changed up his training program this year. He said he wants to keep it a secret what he's doing, but he's very happy with the changes that he's made. And he's another athlete I talked to. He said 2 years ago at Lowlands Throwdown, I came in with no expectations. I was so grateful to be there. I had a great time, and I made it to the CrossFit Games. Last year, and we've heard this from athletes throughout the history of the sport, last year I felt this level of expectation that I had to validate my performance. I had to confirm how good I was. And I didn't, that stress of needing to do that caused me to underperform at the semifinals. He seems relaxed. He seems happy, healthy, excited to be here. And it's possible that Briand and Zanoni, after not necessarily being in the mix last year, are going to kind of do what I talked about with Elena Caratala, where they're going to be those kind of semi-veteran athletes that are going to be lurking around, making it that much more difficult for people to qualify. So really excited to see if they can have bounce back seasons here. But I mean, as we go down this list, like this men's field, man, it's crazy. Fernando Geneza is, I think this was a great performance for him. I wouldn't say he's necessarily an outright runner, but he's got tremendous capacity here in the backfill invite here. Um, you know, workouts where you just have to kind of, it's like rhythmic, cyclical, fast, low skill, high capacity stuff. Fernando Geneza is pretty good. And I was really impressed with him today. Wesolowski went out a little bit hot. He's a good runner. I think he may have overpaced the first couple rounds. He is one of the funniest guys. Had lunch yesterday with the training culture guys. He's not Spanish, but he trains with the training culture. If you don't follow their stuff, he puts out some pretty funny stuff. And the training culture have a really talented videographer, Julian, on their team, who will be putting stuff out throughout the weekend. So he's a dad of two. He's got a 1 and 4-year-old. I was talking to him about balancing that with training. He's had some injuries this year leading into the semis, but he made the games last year. I think he said that really starting 2 weeks ago, his body's been feeling good, and he loves these workouts. He's so grateful, excited to be here. So just another guy who's dangerous this weekend. Totally fine with this for BKG. Probably be one of his 2 worst finishes of the weekend. I think he's going to have good performances tomorrow and likely be back inside the top 10 at the halfway point. I talked to Aniol. He was a little bit bummed because he gave away some spots to BKG and Guillaume Briand in the last round, and they were basically, it was the 3 of them lifting side by side just based on their qualifying positions. But overall, he thinks he executed really well. This is right on par with what his practice time was, and he just said, man, there's a lot of good runners in Europe, and I really couldn't have said it better than that. Ludwig trains with Jona and Henrik Eppelainen quite a bit. He did all the qualifiers with them. He won the Turun Tuomiopäivä, which would be the Turku Tuomiopäivä this year in Finland that I'll be at once again. He had a great showing at Strength and Depth a couple seasons ago. Good competitor, puts himself in the right positions, solid start to the weekend. Fiebig, I think he's going to be one that just continues to climb as the weekend goes on, so decent start for him. Looking a little bit down here, I did want to give a little bit of love to this guy, Nicolas Sauraliotis. Saw him compete in Eurasia Throwdown. He podiumed there. I think this was a great start for him. He told me he's been competing in the sport for 11 years, and he's had a dream of competing at a regional or a semifinal since he started doing CrossFit. He's finally managed to make that come true this year. He's got a nice support system from Greece here on site. So congratulations, Nicolas, on pursuing something for 11 years and finding a way to make it happen. Fabio Benito, I talked about him in the run-up to the competition of if he's healthy, he's dangerous. I think that the workouts really um, I think the workouts tomorrow are really good for him, and that he's going to climb back up and maybe inside the top 20. But he's going to need to have a performance comparable to what he had at Lowlands Throwdown 2 years ago. He took dead last on the opening workout, which had legless rope climbs. It wasn't because of the legless rope climbs. He just made some execution mistakes and got frustrated in that workout. But he climbed all the way back to 8th place, made the last chance qualifier this year, and that's basically what we're going to need to see from Fabian if he wants to go to the games again this season. He snuck the last spot last year, and if he's going to make it, it's probably going to be in a similar fashion this time around. Yorgos, I think, will have a good workouts tomorrow. He competed on a team last week in the Athens Throwdown. It was kind of fun. He did it with Artemis Anastas, who was here this week or today. I saw him a little bit as well. And then here we have kind of the situations that are worth talking about. So Barkley shows us here, Hoffer still has a 23.3 chance to qualify for the CrossFit Games. He's in 30th place. Keep in mind what I said about Haley Adams earlier. After 2 events, 21st, she goes on to win the competition. I mentioned that I had a conversation with Bronislaw. I went up to him and I was like, hey, Bron, a first and a last is better than a 20th and a 20th. And he goes, oh, Brian, think back to 2018 regionals. I was last place on the first workout. 2018, the first workout was a triple threes. So, 3 miles of running. I was last place. I had great performances the rest of the way, and I finished 6th overall. So that was in a field of 40. You can take last place on the first workout and still finish 6th overall. So the big question today is definitely about Jona Koski. Barkley says he's got a 21.9% chance to qualify. And, that's assuming that he's healthy. I haven't been able to get any concrete information about him. He programs that competition in Finland that I was talking about. The competition organizers or owners of the competition are here. I spoke to both of them today. They didn't know what was going on. I spoke to his manager. They hadn't heard anything from him. I did not bother to ask him myself. I did not bother to ask Jami Tikkanen, who's his coach. I'm just going to kind of play a wait and see. It was a little bit concerning to me, the way that he was shuffling and running. It made me think that maybe, remember he hurt his calf at the Rogue Invitation on the first workout. It looked like he had a belt on, so maybe the back was tight or something like that. So I'm not sure. I have Kosi my prayer request today, so he should be good to go. Lynn's praying for you, Yona. I'm freaking about. I was not prepared. That finish from him. Yeah, I thought that he would probably finish in that mix where BKG was. These guys in the 12 through 18 range. I didn't, some people had said online that they thought he might have, like, why didn't you pick him for this workout? Against this field, I didn't like him to necessarily be in the top 10, but I definitely did not expect him to be in 34th on that workout. So, the rest of the guys that are down here, besides Braun, are kind of the guys that are the relatively unknowns entering the weekend. And, like I said earlier, people have to be in these positions, obviously. But Yona, a huge surprise after winning the opening quarterfinals to be down here. If he's healthy, I still think he's got a great chance to make the games. I don't know about podium at this point. I think it's probably too big of a stretch. But, that all the questions about Yona, I'm sure will be answered tomorrow. I'm sorry that I don't have anything more specific, but I just want to, respect the fact that he's competing this weekend and, let them take care of whatever they have. Bron's quote of the day was running is for animals. Yeah. So look for Bronislaw. I mentioned some other guys that'll climb the weekend. He is going to be, I'm assuming this is Yona that he's talking about. His predicted finishing place is now 6th, which is kind of what I was thinking. Still could make the top 10, probably not on the podium. So Barkley's got a really good model for this that he and I have worked on over the years. So that's kind of an affirmation to what I was kind of thinking. Maybe. Well, let's see. Let's see what happens tomorrow. I don't want to say this for sure about Yona. But I'll be really curious to see Barkley what happens on Sunday, because those three workouts on Sunday are really good workouts for Braun, and I think that he can make one of the bigger jumps on the last day of competition that we've ever seen in the history of semifinal slash regionals. Partly because there's three workouts, which is 50% of the competition, but also because of the things that he's specifically good at. His Braun's running improved, and the field just keeps getting better. Also, great question, Christian Kettler. I think Braun basically knew that he was going to have one of these performances, and he's just setting up to have some big home runs the rest of the weekend. I think he knows that the European field is very good at running in general, and that even if he has gotten better at this, I was watching him, he did not look concerned at all. He just seemed to be accepting of his fate. Aster Serve, are you still convinced that Laura will dominate? If so, will she be more dominant than Tia in her semifinal? Yes, to the first half of that question, and yes to the second half of that question. Here's the reason why. Um, the first half I've already said. I just think these are great workouts for her. I'm gonna do a little preview here of the workouts tomorrow to maybe give you guys some tips if you want to play on the Heat One app. Um, really cool what Tyler's been able to do with that. I remember when we first started talking about it, and to see how far he's come. Ooh, Carolyn Prevost, was the 800-meter accurate? I didn't really investigate this at all myself, but I have had a few people send me that it was somewhere between 720 and 730 meters on some of the watches. So I don't really concern myself too much with that overall, because it's everyone's doing the same course, but for athletes it is helpful to know that. So that's just two people that I heard from, 720, 730. So do with that what you will, but a lot of people did ask that today, so thanks for bringing it up. Melanie, getting a little bit to what I was about to say about Laura. Laura and Gabby have been the class of this group of women over the past 2 years. And in the East semifinal, you know, you have Emma Lawson, you have Haley Adams, you have Amanda Barnhart, Brooke Wells, Danielle Brandon. I'm thinking Alexis Raptis. There's just a lot of women that can, they can steal those points a little. And I think that this slate of workouts is perfect for Laura. The field that she's competing against here, I think she's going to have. I think that seventh place will be her worst finish. And it's not that I don't think. I think Tia also has the potential to have finishes that are all in the top 10, top 7, something like that. But I think that there will be other women that do that also in the East, and not as many that do that here in Europe, where you'll have more volatility and shifting on the leaderboard. So I think Laura, amongst the top 3, the biggest, the most competitive regions that have the most spots, is likely to have the kind of best one. Can we chat about Asia times? Was that an actual 800 or 600? Well, their times were slower, right? I didn't actually see what the men's times were, but on the women's side, I think Sahar Kaya had gotten 23 minutes. And what was Amy and Amy and Gabby came in at 21 minutes. Now Sahar Kaya was basically cruising to the finish line. There was no one really threatening her. She did let Raisa get kind of within 20 or 30 seconds, but it was more out of just coasting in and taking the win for what it was. She did say that it was a bummer that the course was the way it was, because she couldn't really open up her stride and run the way that she's capable of. Sahar is a great runner in general in the field. And again, like, it's okay to ask about it, but I spoke about this at the start of a show a couple days ago, that for semifinals, it's as much as we want it to be, it's a really difficult stage of the season to compare across regions, because of things like logistics, the floor layouts, the running layouts, the fact that people are continuously getting better as the weeks go on, as they learn different things. So it's fun to talk about it, but I think it's not the best necessarily stage of the season to have that type of analysis with. If there's any more questions about athletes from today, JR called Laura to win all the workouts for the first. So did I. I actually, in the Heat One app, I picked those about a week ago. As soon as it was open, I think I put Sylvia Garcia for the first one, but when I first picked it, I don't think I changed anything since then. I probably would have picked Gabby if I did it more recently, and then I picked Laura the rest of the way. So we'll see. She also doesn't need to do that, but maybe she will. That would be cool. And it's cool that JR, I wonder if he saw that I did that or said that beforehand. I certainly didn't know that he did, but if he and I were on the same page with that, that would be really cool. Sahara takes the top 10 in running workouts 70%, 8% of the time. Crazy. Yeah, like I said, one of the greatest runners one of her best movements. And once again, Barkley's database affirming. Cool. Thank you, Barkley. So if there are any more questions about specific athletes or performances from today, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we're going to take a look at what's on tap for tomorrow. It's 9:15 p.m. here. Yesterday, I went live at 10:30 in the evening to give some picks. I'll put the picks out for tomorrow on Instagram as well at some point, but let's take a look at the workouts for the individuals, because tomorrow, while the team competition will conclude, the individual competition is really going to start to heat up. And 5 rounds for time, 100 double unders, 20 toes to bar, 10 front squats. It's kind of interesting. Let's see here real quick. Alex Catoulis missed the spot for the games for 1 or 2 places the last two years. Do you believe this will be his year? I really wish. I love Alex Catoulis. His wife, Samantha Morrison, is amazing. They were super helpful when I was going over to Greece. They're always kind, supportive. They are big leaders. He's a big leader in Greece for athletes there, but I don't see it. I don't know. I think if the best case scenario is going to be just on the outside again. So yeah, it's just so tough in Europe. Alex is really, really good. He always competes well in the off season. He's so impressive in Dubai. He just has been knocking on the door. It would be real. I mean, it would be emotional for me if Alex made the games, and but it's really tough. And if you're asking me straight up, I would say I would not pick him to make the games. Kevin, we talked about this earlier for a while. I don't know is the answer, and we're going to wait to see tomorrow. I've asked some people from Finland. They didn't know, and I didn't want to pursue it any further than that. So hopefully not. I never want anyone to be injured, but we'll see. As far as this workout goes for tomorrow, 100 double unders, 20 toes to bar, 10 front squats. There was some workouts. That's interesting because the other workout tomorrow, we'll just throw it up here real quick as well, has the legless rope climbs, 10 calorie legless, 10 box jump over legless, 4 step down, and apparently they're not doing a legless rope climb at the end of the workout, which I think is kind of weird. I think most people think it's kind of weird. I'm sure they have the reasons for it, but it is what it is. These things, these implements were tested in Dubai. We saw, and so I was kind of like looking at those 2 workouts there and putting them together. And some of the athletes that did really well in Dubai are also in this field. So Lazar Djukic won both of those workouts in Dubai, and he said this as much. I believe it was on Clydesdale Media. I might have had him on, and he said that the first 3 workouts looked great for him, and the first 3 workouts absolutely looked great for him. Is that, I don't know if this is actually what they said or not, but they're doing already 13 legless rope climbs. I don't see why a 14th would be a safety thing. You know, when they have a lot of competitions have a standard that you have to do a legless rope climb, and then you can either descend in control or you drop any way you want to, and that's up to the athlete to take that risk. But yeah, I mean, it could potentially be a big deal. One less legless rope climb, especially for the women, could be game changing for some athletes. My general feeling about this workout is that for the men, we're getting ahead of ourselves on legless rope climbs. I'm sorry. So 100 double unders, 20 toes to bar, 10 front squats. I love Lazar Djukic on this workout. I like Fabian Benito, Ula Super next BKG. If you're looking for maybe a sleeper pick, Yorgos Karovis might be a good one on this. On the women's side of things, obviously I like Laura. I like Karen Frey, Claudia Gluck, Elisa Fuliano. If you're looking for a sleeper pick, Elena Caratala and Sylvia Garcia, the 2 Spanish athletes. Racing the final rope guides could lead to accidents. It's okay. No, they didn't run out of the rope. So only 1 rope. Anyway, so those are some picks that I like out the gate. If I had to pick just one to win it, I would go with Lazar and Laura. If you don't want to go with the obvious pick, I think that Claudia Gluck and Elisa Fuliano are sneaky picks here. Again, you might look at the front squats and say, I don't know. They crushed the front squat intervals EMOM workout that Brandon Luckett programmed. I've got all my stats by movement prepped in my link tree if you want to check it out. So Barkley has the capacity to filter by specific movements in his database and give the percentages that you've seen today. That's available in the link tree, so you guys can go and take a look there if you want to do a little deep dive. These are, I'm making these picks, not necessarily looking at those, but I do often consider the data that Barkley has. So that's individual event 2 tomorrow. I think it's going to be a fun workout, and obviously they're seeded based on today. It was only 1 workout today, so I do think that there's still some potential to have some great workouts come out of the early heats, so you may not want to miss those. And then Lynn says for E3, I have Luka. He called his shot on it. Yeah, so I think both of the Jukic brothers will do well on this one once again. I went back and looked at the Lagos rope climb workout from a couple years ago. So in lowlands, of the athletes who competed there that are here, it was Lazar, Mickey Smith, Luka Jukic, Callum Clements. So there's maybe a sleeper pick on the Spanish side, and BKG. And then on the men's side, it was Henry Kapelainen, Guillaume Briant, and Alex Catullus. So those may be some good performances. If you're looking for maybe a dark horse pick, Lucas Hoyza, who competed on a team last year, had a good performance on that workout. He won individual the year before. And Mikhail Wyzlowski did not do that workout, but I think he could have a good, another maybe a top 15 on this one. On the women's side, once again, I think Laura and Karen Frey will do very well. Karen and Laura were the top two on the Lagos rope climb workout back in 2022. Elena Karatala had a good workout there. We talked about her earlier today in strength and depth that year. Turi Helgadottir, Emily Lundberg, Jacqueline Dahlstrom were the top three returning athletes. Now, one athlete that I'm really going to be looking at for Lagos rope climbs tomorrow is Gabby Magawa. If you go back and watch the Lowlands Throwdown workout from a couple years ago, she was on a clock. She was working with John Singleton at the time, and she would almost walk the runs, look at her clock, and she was very calculated on doing the Lagos rope climbs to make sure she didn't fail. I have heard that she's made some progress in that area, and that she's going to have a better showing this time around. So let's see how Gabby has progressed on the Lagos rope climbs the last 2 years. I'll be very excited about it. What about Emma Taw for event 3? I don't think Emma was at the semifinals that year, but yes, great. I think Emma Taw can do very solid on that as well. He's predicted to. His qualifying is obviously out of my control, though. But please tell me Brent will qualify. Oh, yeah, West Coast Classic next week. They've mentioned she's improved a lot. I don't know who they is, but yeah. So I think that Gabby, it'll be fun to see Gabby do that tomorrow. Forget these events. What's a Kill Taylor workout? I actually have no idea. Yeah, I don't know. I'm semifinals is going on. I can't have capacity for anything else other than that right now. So that's kind of the breakdown from things that happened today, what I'm expecting for tomorrow. As with today, I'll try to do maybe 1 or 2 updates live on Instagram during the day, just to give you guys some insights of the things that I'm seeing. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. And yeah, I'll put some stuff up on Instagram, maybe a couple reels and I'll just kind of try to continue to have conversations with athletes, coaches, find out some stuff that I can, and I'll be back on here tomorrow, 8 o'clock local time, 2 o'clock on the East Coast, to do something like this again. Tomorrow we'll be sending 8 teams to the CrossFit Games from Europe and 1 from Asia, and the individuals will be at the 50% way of the European semifinal, probably one of my top 3 competitions of the year. Thank you, Daniel. It was about an hour and 22 minutes straight of talking to you guys. So I hope it was okay and informative and maybe fun for you. It's fun for me. I love this stuff. I love the athletes here, supporting them and doing what I can for you guys to get the best experience on the semifinals. So thank you guys for being here. Thanks for all the questions and the thoughts. Kevin Doyle, appreciate it, my man. It means a lot. And we will see you guys tomorrow. As always, be friendly, our friends.